The fog clung to the ancient stones of Dark House like a shroud, as the wind whispered secrets through the skeletal trees. It was a night in 1933 when Lord Reginald Blackwood, master of the estate, was found dead in his locked study, his face twisted in eternal terror, as if fleeing from some spectral horror. No weapon, no intruder, only the echo of a scream that chilled the household to its core. Whispers of a family curse, of ghosts from centuries past, swirled among the servants. Enter Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective, summoned to unravel the enigma or confront the unearthly. 98 words. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Shadows. The London fog pressed against the windows of Hercule Poirot's flat like a living thing, thick and yellowed by the gas lamps below. It was the sort of November evening in 1933 when even the Thames seemed to hold its breath, and the city's pulse beat slower under the weight of winter. Poirot sat at his walnut writing desk, the green-shaded lamp casting a pool of light over the neat stacks of correspondence that never quite dwindled, no matter how many cases he closed. His small, precise hands, those of a watchmaker rather than a detective, turned a telegram over and over, as though the paper itself might yield secrets if sufficiently interrogated. The message was typed on heavy cream stock, the watermark of a country stationer visible even in the lamplight. It read, "Urgent stop, Lord Reginald Blackwood, deceased under circumstances most mysterious stop. Dark House, Devon stop, family curse whispered, stop your discretion and genius required. Stop train ticket enclosed, stop, Lady Evelyn Blackwood. Poirot's moustaches, magnificent, symmetrical, the pride of 3 continents, twitched with professional interest. Curse, he murmured to the empty room, the word tasting of melodrama and cheap novels. Bah! The English, they are so fond of their ghosts. Yet a locked room, a scream in the night. These are the little grey cells' delight." He rose, smoothing the crease of his pinstriped trousers, and crossed to the window. Below, a taxi's headlamps cut twin tunnels through the murk. Somewhere out there, a woman waited who believed her husband had been frightened to death by a phantom. Poirot's reflection stared back at him, compact, immaculate, the eyes bright with the anticipation of order restored to chaos. "George!" he called. His valet appeared with the silent efficiency of a well-oiled hinge. "Sir, pack for 3 days. The country air, it is invigorating, non? Also the trunk with the magnifying glasses, both the Bausch and Lomb and the pocket lights, and my grey spats. One must not let standards slip merely because one chases spectres." George allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "Very good, sir. Shall I lay out the heavy Melton overcoat? Oui, and the muffler of cashmere. Devon in November is no place for elegance without prudence." By 10 o'clock the following morning, Poirot was ensconced in a first-class compartment of the Devon Bell, the train's rhythmic clatter a soothing counterpoint to his thoughts. He had read the enclosed newspaper clipping twice. Peer found dead in locked study. No signs of foul play. Dark House, nor Tavistock, 3rd Novice. Lord Reginald Blackwood, 12th Baronet, was discovered yesterday morning by household staff in circumstances described as deeply distressing. The study door was bolted from within, windows latched. Dr. M. Forsyth, attending physician, pronounced death due to cardiac failure, though the expression upon the deceased's countenance has given rise to local speculation of supernatural agency. Lady Blackwood declined comment. Poirot folded the clipping with geometrical precision and tucked it into his Morocco wallet. Cardiac failure, yes, but terror could stop a heart as surely as strychnine. He remembered a case in Liège, years ago, an old miser terrified by masked intruders until his ticker surrendered. The masks had been cardboard, the intruders his own nephews. Human greed wore many disguises. Why not that of a ghost? The Devon landscape unrolled beyond the window, hedgerows silvered with frost, stone walls older than the Magna Carta, the moor rising in undulating waves of russet and charcoal. Dartmoor, land of prison and legend, where the hound had bayed and Conan Doyle's imagination still prowled. Dark House lay on its fringe, the clipping had said, a manor built in the reign of the Second Charles, added to by Regency spendthrifts and Victorian spiritualists. Poirot pictured gargoyles, suits of armour, a library smelling of damp vellum and secrets. At Tavistock Station, a liveried chauffeur awaited beside a Daimler the colour of midnight. The man touched his cap. "Mr. Poirot, Lady Blackwood's compliments. Name's Wilkins. Nasty drive ahead. Fog's thick as peas pudding on the moor." Poirot climbed in, inhaling the scent of beeswax and old leather. "You have served the family long, Wilkins." "Born in the gatehouse, sir. 42 years. Seen 'em come and go. Lords, ladies, and—" he hesitated. "And ghosts," Poirot supplied gently. Wilkins' knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Begging your pardon, sir, but there's things at Dark House best not spoken of in daylight." The Daimler purred along sunken lanes, the fog so dense that the headlamps seemed to push against a woolen curtain. Occasionally, a gatepost loomed, or the skeletal branch of an oak clawed the roof. Poirot noted the way Wilkins' eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, as though expecting pursuit. "Tell me of Lord Blackwood," Poirot prompted. "Fine gentleman, sir. Bit stern, kept the estate tight. Loved his history, always digging in the library, corresponding with museums. But the last month—" Wilkins shook his head. "Jumpy as a cat. Said he heard footsteps where no one walked." Lady Evelyn laughed it off, but the maids were giving notice, and the son, young Mr. Jonathan, wild, sir. Cards, horses, fast motor cars. Lordship threatened to cut him off more than once. Still, blood's blood. The car breasted a rise, and Dark House revealed itself like a ship emerging from mist. It was larger than Poirot had imagined. 3 stories of blackened granite, mullioned windows glaring like suspicious eyes, a rookery cawing from the chimneys. Ivy strangled the west wing. One tower leaned perceptibly, as though the house itself tired of standing upright. A gravel sweep curved before the entrance, where gas lamps flickered in iron sconces, their flames trembling in the damp air. Wilkins braked. "Here we are, sir. Mind the step. It's uneven." The front door opened before Poirot reached it. A woman stood framed in the Gothic arch, tall and slender, in mourning black, her fair hair drawn severely back. Grief had refined rather than ravaged her beauty. The bones of her face might have been carved by a Renaissance sculptor. Only her eyes, pale grey ringed with sleepless violet, betrayed the strain. "Monsieur Poirot." Her voice was low, cultured, with the faintest tremor. "I am Evelyn Blackwood. You cannot know what your presence means." Poirot bowed over her gloved hand. "Madame, it is my privilege to serve. Accept my condolences, and my assurance that truth, however veiled, shall be unveiled." She led him into a vaulted hall where suits of armour stood sentinel, and a fire roared in a grate large enough to roast an ox. The air smelled of applewood smoke, beeswax, and something metallic, fear, perhaps, or old blood. Ancestral portraits scowled down, Blackwoods in ruffs and periwigs in the scarlet of Waterloo. One lady in particular caught Poirot's eye. Pale, black-haired, a cruel mouth. The brass plate read, "Lady Arabella Blackwood, née Trevose, Auberson 1692. Lady Evelyn followed his gaze. "Our family spectre. burned as a witch in the churchyard yonder. They say her curse lingers. Superstition, madame, is the refuge of the unimaginative, yet imagination itself can kill. A man approached across the checkered marble, tall, stooped, dressed in impeccable black. His face was a map of old loyalties and older sorrows. A scar ran from left ear to jaw, livid against pallor. "Hargrove, sir, butler. May I take your coat?" Poirot surrendered the Melton, noting the butler's hands. Steady, but the knuckles scarred as though from brawls or barbed wire. "You discovered the body, I understand." Hargrove's eyes flickered. "No, sir. That was Miss Thorne, the housemaid. I broke the door." Lady Evelyn interposed smoothly. "Tea in the winter parlour, Hargrove, and ask Dr. Voss and my stepson to join us. Monsieur Poirot will wish to meet the household." As Hargrove bowed and departed, Poirot's gaze travelled upward. A minstrel's gallery encircled the hall, shadows pooled in its recesses. For an instant he thought he saw movement, a bare swirl of white, but when he looked again, there was nothing. The winter parlour was a smaller room, panelled in oak darkened by centuries of smoke. A pianoforte stood in one corner, its lid closed like a coffin. Crimson velvet curtains shut out the fog, and a chandelier of Waterford crystal glittered above a table set with Sèvres porcelain. Poirot approved the symmetry. Lady Evelyn poured tea with the concentration of a priestess at an altar. "Milk, monsieur. Lemon. Milk, s'il vous plaît. 2 lumps. Precision in small things, madame, is the foundation of clarity in great ones." She handed him the cup. "Then let us be precise. Reginald died between midnight and 6 a.m. on the 3rd. The study door was bolted inside, the windows latched, no weapon, no poison. Dr. Forsyth was adamant. Yet his face—" She set down the teapot with a clatter. "Forgive me, it was as though he had seen the Medusa." Poirot sipped. The tea was Darjeeling, first flush, excellent. And the scream? Miss Thorne heard it at 2:30. She was wakeful, nerves, she says. Thought it was the wind until she saw the light under the study door. Light? A lamp, perhaps? Reginald disliked bright light when working. He used a single green-shaded bulb, but Clara swears the glow was bluish, cold, like foxfire. Poirot filed the detail away. The household at the time? Myself, my stepson Jonathan, Dr. Elias Voss, Reginald's oldest friend researching local folklore, Hargrove, Miss Thorne, cook, and 2 undermaids. Wilkins sleeps over the stables. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. A young man entered, 25 perhaps, with the Blackwood height, but none of the late lord's gravitas. His dinner jacket was impeccably cut, yet somehow askew, as though its wearer had dressed in a hurry or a temper. His eyes were bloodshot, his handshake limp. "Jonathan Blackwood," he announced, as if the name might intimidate. "Heard you're the sleuth. Hope you're worth the fare from London." Poirot smiled urbanely. "I am Poirot, and you, monsieur, are the heir." Jonathan flushed. "Step heir, technically. Father married Evelyn when I was 12. Still, the title's mine now." He poured himself whiskey rather than tea, a generous measure. "Ghastly business. Father wasn't the sort to scare easily. Fought at lose, you know." "Yet fear takes many forms," Poirot observed. "Tell me of the day's proceeding." Jonathan shrugged. "Nothing out of the ordinary. Row about my tailor's bills, usual stuff. He'd been shut up with his papers, muttering about some family document. Found something in the muniments room, apparently. Wouldn't say what." A second figure appeared in the doorway, older, bespectacled, carrying a leather folio bulging with notes. His tweeds were academic, his beard professorial. "Voss," he introduced himself, shaking Poirot's hand with scholarly enthusiasm. Elias Voss, folklorist. Fascinating case you have here, sir. Classic revenant manifestation. Poirot inclined his head. You believe in ghosts, Doctor? I believe in the power of belief. Terror can be a weapon more subtle than steel. Voss's eyes gleamed behind his lenses. Lady Arabella's curse is well documented. Executed 1692 for consorting with the devil, though I suspect the real crime was owning land the Blackwoods coveted. Lady Evelyn rose abruptly. Enough. Monsieur Poirot, the study awaits. I would have you see it before the light fails entirely. They processed along a corridor lined with stag heads, their glass eyes reflecting the wavering gas jets. Jonathan trailed behind, glass in hand. Voss murmured Latin phrases under his breath. Hargrove materialized to open the study door, his face impassive. The room was large, book-lined, smelling of leather and cigar smoke, now overlaid with the faint sweetness of decay. A massive partner's desk dominated the center, its green leather top scarred by generations of quills. The chair, Reginald's chair, lay on its side, one caster broken. Papers were scattered like snow. Share certificates, a map of the estate, a half-finished letter in a spidery hand. Poirot moved with the delicacy of a cat in a museum. He righted the chair, noting the angle at which it had fallen, away from the desk, toward the fireplace. On the hearthrug lay a fine grey ash, not the coarse residue of coal. He pinched a sample between kid-gloved fingers, sniffed, then touched it to his tongue. Metallic, with a faint bitterness. Curious, he murmured. The windows were indeed latched, the bolts rusty but functional. The door's bolt was sturdy iron, the key still in the lock on the inside. Poirot examined the keyhole, then the floorboards adjacent. No scratches, no pry marks. He tapped the panelling, solid oak, no hollow echoes. Jonathan hovered. See, impossible, unless the old girl really does walk. Poirot ignored him, drawn to a small object glinting beneath the desk, a mother-of-pearl button, women's torn from its thread. He pocketed it. Lady Evelyn watched from the doorway, arms folded tightly. Reginald locked himself in at 11:30, said he had to finish cataloguing something, wouldn't be disturbed. I retired. The scream woke me, but by the time Hargrove broke in... Poirot's gaze swept the room once more. On a side table stood a tantalus with 3 crystal decanters. Whiskey, brandy, port. 2 glasses, one with a fingerprint smudge at the rim. He lifted it to the light, a faint bluish residue. Dr. Voss, he called softly, this luminescence you mentioned, might it leave traces? Voss adjusted his spectacles. Certain fungi, certain chemicals. Phosphorus, for instance, glows with a cold light, but it burns the skin. Yet not the tongue, in small quantities. Poirot set the glass down. Madame, the maids, do any use cosmetics with luminous properties? Stage makeup, perhaps? Lady Evelyn frowned. Clara, Miss Thorne, buys theatrical supplies in Plymouth. She's fond of amateur dramatics. A piece clicked into place, though the puzzle was far from complete. Poirot turned to the fireplace. The grate was cold, but ash had been swept into a neat pile. He crouched, sifting with a silver pencil. Amid the grey, something glinted. Glass, a shard no longer than a fingernail, curved like the base of a file. He straightened. For now, I have seen enough. The little grey cells, they begin to stir. But first, dinner, I think, one cannot deduce on an empty stomach. As they filed out, Hargrove closed the door behind them, turning the key with a click that echoed like a judge's gavel. In the corridor, the gas jets flickered, though there was no draught. Somewhere above, A floorboard creaked once, twice, then silence. Poirot paused, head cocked. "Tell me, Hargrove, do the attics connect to this wing?" The butler's scar twitched. "Old servants' passage, sir. Boarded up these 20 years. Boarded, perhaps, but not, I think, forgotten." Dinner was announced for 8. Poirot retired to wash, his mind a whirl of ash and buttons and cold blue light. In his guest chamber, tapestries of unicorn hunts, a 4-poster that could have slept a rugby team, he laid out his notebook. On the first page he wrote, Chapter 2, The Locked Room Enigma. The candle flames had barely recovered from their mysterious collapse when the drop of blood struck the tureen. It spread like a crimson rose across the white porcelain, and for a heartbeat the dining room was silent, save for the crackle of the fire and the ticking of the ormolu clock on the mantel. 8 faces stared at the soup. 8 suspects, Poirot corrected himself mentally, for even the dead man's portrait above the sideboard seemed to watch. Lady Evelyn was first to move. She lifted the silver ladle with a hand that trembled only slightly and stirred the consommé. The blood dissolved into a faint pink swirl. "A prank," she declared, voice brittle. "The maids have been jumpy. One of them must have—" "No, madam." Poirot's tone cut through the tension like a scalpel. "Observe." He dipped a clean spoon, lifted a droplet, and held it to the chandelier's light. "Too viscous for stage blood, too bright for animal. Human, I would wager, and fresh," he sniffed delicately. "No trace of preservative. Someone bled. Here, tonight." Jonathan Blackwood laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "First father frightened to death, now blood in the soup. We're cursed, I tell you. Arabella's getting her own back." Dr. Voss leaned forward, eyes gleaming with scholarly hunger. "Fascinating. A poltergeist phenomenon, perhaps, or a deliberate attempt to— Enough!" Lady Evelyn's voice cracked like a whip. "Hargrove, remove the tureen. Serve the fish. Monsieur Poirot, you will excuse us if appetites are subdued." The butler obeyed with the stoicism of a guardsman. As he lifted the heavy silver lid, Poirot noted a faint smear on the inner rim. More blood, smeared deliberately. A message? A warning? He filed it away. The fish, sole in a delicate vermouth sauce, was excellent, but few ate. Conversation limped. Jonathan drank steadily. Voss murmured about spectral manifestations. Lady Evelyn's gaze kept drifting to the blood-stained tablecloth, now whisked away. Poirot observed them all, the little grey cells cataloguing micro-expressions, the way Jonathan's left eye twitched when money was mentioned, the way Voss's fingers drummoused on his wineglass in perfect 5/4 time, the way Lady Evelyn's mourning ring, black jet set with a single diamond, flashed as she twisted it round and round. After dinner, coffee was served in the library. The room was a cavern of books, Morocco-bound volumes climbing to a ceiling painted with faded frescoes of the Judgment of Paris. A fire roared. Outside, the fog pressed against the French windows like a living thing. Poirot declined brandy. It dulls the precision, and instead requested that the study be relit. I would examine it again alone. The psychology of a room changes after dark. Lady Evelyn hesitated. The servants are terrified. They believe. Belief is the murderer's ally, madame. Send Hargrove with lamps. The rest of you remain here. Dr. Voss, perhaps you will entertain with tales of Devonshire hauntings. Monsieur Jonathan, restrain the whisky. We have much to discuss tomorrow. Hargrove led the way with a candelabrum of 6 tapers. The corridor seemed longer now, the suits of armour more menacing. Somewhere a clock chimed 10, slow, deliberate strokes that echoed like a funeral bell. At the study door, the butler paused. "Sir, begging your pardon, but the room feels wrong after sunset. Cold spots, whispers." Poirot's smile was kindly. "You are a man of sensibility, Hargrove. But consider, cold is merely absence of heat, whispers merely air currents. Unlock, s'il vous plaît." The key turned with a screech of seldom-used metal. Inside, the study was exactly as Poirot had left it, save that the overturned chair now faced the door, not the fireplace. Hargrove's sharp intake of breath confirmed it had been otherwise. "Interesting," Poirot murmured. "Someone has visited." He dismissed the butler with instructions to station Wilkins outside and admit no one. Then, alone, he began his systematic search. First, the chair. He righted it, noting fresh scuff marks on the parquet, heel drags as though someone had braced against it. The seat cushion bore a faint indentation, deeper on the left side. Lord Blackwood had been right-handed. The pressure suggested another person sitting briefly, perhaps leaning close. Next, the desk. The scattered papers had been disturbed. The estate map now lay atop the half-written letter. Poirot examined, the letter under his pocket lens. It was addressed to a London solicitor. "Cannot delay longer. The document in the muniments room changes everything. If my suspicions are correct, the Blackwood title is a fraud perpetuated these 2 centuries. I have confronted E with the evidence. She denies, but her agitation." The sentence broke off mid-word. Poirot's eyebrows rose. E could be Evelyn or Elias Voss, or even the maid Clara's surname, Edwards. He photographed the page with his miniature Kodak, then replaced it exactly. The fireplace next. He knelt, shining his electric torch into the grate. The ash pile had been raked again, deliberately to conceal something. With tweezers, he extracted the curved glass shard he had seen earlier. Definitely the base of a small phial, no larger than a perfume sample. The inner surface bore iridescent traces, bluish like the residue in the whiskey glass. "Phosphorus," he whispered, "or a compound thereof. But how administered?" He moved to the windows. The latches were old but secure, the glass panes intact. Yet when he pressed his palm to the central mullion, it shifted a fraction. A closer look revealed a hairline crack in the putty, recent, the edges sharp. Someone had loosened it, then resealed with fresh putty coloured to match. Clever, but not clever enough for Hercule Poirot. The bookcases. He ran his fingers along the spines, Gibbon, Burke, a complete set of the Gentleman's Magazine, until he found what he sought. A gap where a volume had been removed. The dust pattern showed it had been taken within the last day. The shelf was at eye level for a tall man, or a woman on tiptoe. A soft thud overhead made him freeze. The attic again. He listened. Scrape, pause, scrape, like something heavy being dragged across bare boards. Then silence. Poirot extinguished his torch and opened the study door a crack. Wilkins stood sentinel, pipe clenched in teeth. "Hear that, mon ami?" "Aye, sir. Rats, likely. Big uns up there." "Rats do not wear boots." Poirot closed the door, relit the candelabrum, and continued. "The Tantalus." He lifted the whiskey decanter, swirled it. The level was lower than memory served. Someone had helped themselves since afternoon. He poured a thimbleful into a clean glass, added a drop of iodine from his pocket kit. The liquid turned cloudy, then separated into oily globules, not whiskey alone. Oil of bitter almonds, he identified. Cyanide. Enough in the decanter to kill a regiment. But Lord Blackwood died of fright, not poison. He stoppered the decanter carefully. A trap for the unwary, or a red herring. A search of the desk drawers yielded more. A ledger showing Jonathan's debts, 12,000, ruinous for 1933. A love letter in feminine hand, unsigned, pleading for a meeting before it is too late. And tucked beneath blotting paper, a photograph. Lady Evelyn, younger, laughing on a Riviera beach with a man who was decidedly not Lord Blackwood. The man's face had been scratched out with something sharp. Jealousy or fear of recognition. Poirot pocketed the photograph. The pieces were assembling, but the picture remained obscured. Midnight approached. He stood at the centre of the room, eyes closed, visualizing the sequence. Lord Blackwood enters at 11:30, locks the door, works at desk, cataloguing the mysterious document, hears a noise, sees a light, rises, chair overturns, moves toward, what? The fireplace? The window? He opened his eyes. The rug before the hearth was slightly askew, revealing a corner of parquetry darker than the rest. A trapdoor, perhaps. He knelt, pressed, nothing. But when he shone his torch obliquely, he saw faint scratches radiating from one knot in the wood. A concealed mechanism. Before he could investigate further, the candles guttered violently. The temperature plummeted. His breath plumed in the air. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement, a swirl of white at the window. He whirled, torchbeam cutting the darkness. Nothing, only the fog, thick as cotton wool, pressing against the glass. But the window latch, he could have sworn it had been fastened, was now unhooked, the casement ajar by half an inch. A breath of damp moor air carried the scent of wet earth and something metallic. Blood? Poirot crossed swiftly, relatched the window, and examined the sill. A single fingerprint in the condensation, small, delicate, the pad of a woman's index finger. He photographed it against a sixpence for scale. Then, from the attic directly above, came the scream, not human, but close enough to raise the hairs on his neck. A wail of anguish that rose and fell like a banshee's keen, ending in a guttural choke. Poirot snatched the candelabrum and flung open the study door. "Wilkins! The attic stairs! Now!" The chauffeur led him at a run through a baize door, up a narrow servant's staircase that smelled of dust and mice. Cobwebs brushed Poirot's face. His patent shoes slipped on worn treads. At the top, a padlocked door barred their way. "Stand back." Wilkins raised a boot and kicked. The hasp splintered. They burst into the attic, a vast space under the eaves, lit by a single dormer window. Moonlight filtered through grimy glass, illuminating trunks, broken furniture, a dressmaker's dummy swathed in yellowed lace. In the centre of the floor lay a woman, Clara Thorne, the maid, unconscious, a livid bruise blooming on her temple. Beside her, a silver candlestick rolled gently, as though recently dropped. And on the floorboards, written in what looked like blood but smelled of stage paint, were the words, "The curse claims its own." Poirot knelt, checked the girl's pulse. Steady. The bruise was fresh, the skin broken. He lifted her eyelid. Pupils equal, reactive. Concussion, not fatal. "Wilkins, carry her to her room. Send for Dr. Forsyth, and touch nothing here." As the chauffeur lifted Clara, Poirot's torch swept. The attic. Footprints in the dust. Small, heeled, leading to a trunk in the far corner. The lid was ajar. Inside, a white gown, phosphorescent paint still wet on the hem, a wig of long black hair, a battery-powered lantern with blue filter, and a gramophone record labelled in red ink, "Screams, property of Plymouth Repertory Company." He was closing the trunk when his foot struck something metallic. A small brass key, old, ornate. It did not match any door he had seen. Downstairs, the household had gathered in the hall, summoned by the commotion. Lady Evelyn's face was chalk white. Jonathan reeked of whisky. Voss clutched a notebook as though it were a talisman. Hargrove stood apart, arms folded, scar livid in the gaslight. Poirot descended the main staircase like a judge entering court. The mystery deepens, mes amis. We have an assault upon the maid, a staged apparition, and, he held up the key, a means of entry to places unknown. Tomorrow, we explore the attics by daylight. Tonight, no one leaves their room. Wilkins will patrol the corridors. Dr. Voss, you will examine Mademoiselle Clara when she wakes. And Madame, he bowed to Lady Evelyn, lock your door. The phantom walks, but it is flesh and blood. As the household dispersed, Poirot lingered by the suit of armour nearest the study. He had noticed earlier that the gauntlet was misaligned. Now, reaching inside, his fingers closed on a folded paper. It was the missing page from Lord Blackwood's letter. Evelyn insists the document is a forgery, but the seal is genuine. If Arabella's marriage to the first baronet was bigamous, then every Blackwood since is illegitimate. Jonathan would lose everything. I must confront Voss. He authenticated the seal. If he is part of this... The page ended in a blot of ink, as though the pen had been hurled down in fury. Poirot folded the paper into his waistcoat. The little grey cells sang, motive upon motive, title, fortune, reputation. But the locked room, how had the murderer entered and exited, leaving terror in their wake? Between 11:30 and 2:30, something had entered that room. Not through door or window, through the floor. He tapped the parquetry again. The knot that had interested him earlier depressed under pressure. A soft click, and a square of flooring lifted on concealed hinges, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Poirot's pulse quickened. A priest's hole, or smuggler's tunnel, common in old Devon houses. He shone his torch downward. The steps were worn, damp. At the bottom, a narrow passage stretched away, brick-lined, the air thick with mould and the faint sweetness of decay. He descended 3 steps, then paused. Footprints in the dust, small, heeled, the same as in the attic. They led down, then back up, the return prints deeper, as though carrying weight. And on the 3rd step, a single drop of blood still wet. Somewhere in the darkness below, water dripped with metronomic precision. Poirot retreated, closed the trapdoor, and replaced the rug. Tomorrow, with daylight and reinforcements, he would explore. Tonight, the house held its breath. As he prepared for bed, pyjamas pressed, moustaches netted, a glass of tisane steaming, he heard it again, the scrape overhead deliberate, almost jaunty. Then, faint but unmistakable, a woman's laugh, low, mocking, cut off abruptly. Poirot smiled into the darkness. Bonsoir, ma petite fantôme. Tomorrow, Hercule Poirot will clip your wings. Chapter 3. Interrogating the air dawn over Dark House was the colour of tarnished pewter. Mist clung to the moor like a mourner's veil, and the rooks wheeled above the chimneys with cries that sounded almost human. Hercule Poirot stood at his bedroom window, fully dressed. Charcoal suit, white waistcoat, tie knotted with mathematical precision, watching the fog thin just enough to reveal the gravel sweep and the Daimler, its bonnet still beaded with dew. He had slept little. The little grey cells required no lullabies, only puzzles. At 7:30 sharp, Hargrove knocked with hot water and the morning's post. 1 letter, thick vellum, sealed in crimson wax with the Blackwood crest, a raven clutching a broken sword. Poirot slit it open. Monsieur Poirot, Clara Thorne has regained consciousness. She insists on speaking only to you. Come to the still room at 8. Do not trust the passages. E.V. The still room lay in the oldest wing, a stone-flagged chamber redolent of lavender and lye. Clara sat on a settle, a compress to her temple, eyes wide with residual terror. She was perhaps 22, pretty in the English rose fashion, but fear had bleached the colour from her cheeks. "Monsieur," she whispered, "it were Lady Arabella. I saw her plain as day in the attic. White dress, hair like midnight, eyes burning red." Poirot sat opposite, voice gentle. "Describe the sequence, mademoiselle. Every detail." She swallowed. "Couldn't sleep, heard scratching overhead. Took a candle, went up the back stair. Door was open, should have been locked. Saw the trunk, the gown. Then something struck me." She touched the bruise. "Woke with you bending over me." Poirot produced the brass key from the attic. "This?" Her eyes widened. "That's the old master's study key. Spare one. Lordship kept it in the muniments room." "Interesting." He tucked it away. "And Lord Blackwood, did he confide in you?" A flush. "He was kind, sir. Said I reminded him of his sister, lost young. Gave me a locket once." She pulled a silver oval from her apron. Inside, a miniature of Reginald smiling. "Lady Evelyn saw it, flew into a rage, said I was no better than I should be." Jealousy, then, or fear of loose tongues? Poirot filed it. "One more thing. The blood in the soup last night. Yours?" She shook her head. "I never left my room after supper till the attic." At 8:15 he left her with a ETched, reassuring pat, and proceeded to the breakfast room. Jonathan Blackwood was already there, attacking Kippers as though they had insulted him. His eyes were bloodshot, his hand none too steady with the coffee cup. "Morning, Poirot," he said without looking up. "Sleep well? Or did the family ghost tuck you in?" Poirot poured coffee, added precisely 1 lump. "I slept as one does when the mind is occupied. You, monsieur, appear to have wrestled demons." Jonathan gave a bark of laughter. "Whiskey demons, mostly. Look here, I'll be straight. Father was cutting me off again. 12,000 quid in the red. He found out about a flutter at Ascot. Said if I didn't reform, the estate would go to the National Trust. He stabbed a kipper. Motive enough for the police, I suppose. Yet you were playing cards with Dr. Voss until 2 a.m. Voss'll vouch for me. We were in the billiard room. Door open. Hargrove brought sandwiches at 1. After that I went to bed. Heard the scream. Thought it was the wind." Poirot sipped. "Your father's last letter mentions a document that could illegitimize the title. You knew of this?" Jonathan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "He hinted. Said the Blackwood line might be a sham since 1692. I told him I didn't care. Title's a millstone anyway. But Evelyn?" He glanced toward the door. "She's obsessed with position. Married father for the coronet, everyone knows." A footstep in the corridor. Lady Evelyn entered, regal in dove grey, pearls at her throat. "Speaking ill of the dead, Jonathan? How very filial." The young man flushed. "Just answering questions, stepmother." Poirot rose, bowing. "Madam, a word in private after breakfast? The muniments room, perhaps?" She inclined her head. "Of course." The muniments room was a vault beneath the west tower, reached by a spiral stair that smelled of damp stone and candle smoke. Shelves groaned under deed boxes, marriage settlements, a family Bible the size of a suitcase. In the centre stood a table littered with papers. Lord Blackwood's last workplace. Poirot donned cotton gloves. "Your husband worked here the afternoon before his death?" "Obsessively," Evelyn replied. "He had unearthed a marriage certificate. Arabella Trevose to Sir Giles Blackwood, 1689. But Another record shows Sir Giles already wed in London 1688. If proven, the second marriage is bigamous, the baronetcy void. And you, madam? I urged him to burn it. The scandal would ruin us. He refused. Her voice trembled. That night we quarrelled bitterly. I retired at 11. He locked himself in the study. Poirot lifted a parchment sealed with red wax, the authentic seal according to the late Lord's note. He compared it to a modern impression. Identical. Dr. Voss authenticated this. He did. Said the wax was period correct, the hand genuine. A soft click behind them. Dr. Voss entered, folio under, arm. Speaking of me, I've examined Clara. Concussion, nothing worse. She babbles of ghosts, poor child. Poirot turned. Doctor, the spare study key, was it here? Voss blinked. Certainly. Lord Blackwood showed it to me, kept it in the Bible. He opened the great book. The key was gone. Jonathan, who had followed them down, swore softly. So anyone could have taken it. Anyone with access, Poirot corrected. Now, the tunnel beneath the study, I discovered it last night. Footprints, small, heeled, leading down, then up again, deeper on return, as though carrying a weight. Evelyn's hand flew to her throat. A priest's hole? Or a murderer's highway? Poirot produced the white feather from the letterbox, now sealed in an envelope. This was pushed through at 3:17 a.m. when the lights failed. Stained with blood, human type O, whose blood we shall discover. He led them back upstairs to the study. Sunlight now pierced the fog, revealing dust motes dancing like tiny ghosts. Poirot knelt by the trapdoor, lifted it. The stone steps descended into gloom. "Wilkins!" he called. The chauffeur appeared with lanterns. Together they descended. The tunnel was narrow, brick-vaulted, running beneath the house toward the stables. 20 yards along, a side passage branched left, blocked by a fall of earth and stone. But on the main path, fresh scuff marks in the mud. And there, caught on a protruding nail, a scrap of white lace. Poirot held it to the lantern. From the attic gown, our phantom used this route. Jonathan whistled. So father could have been attacked from below? No, the trapdoor was concealed beneath the rug. He would have heard it open. No, the intruder entered after death to arrange the scene. The terror came first. They emerged in the old ice house, its door hidden behind ivy. From here, anyone could slip back into the manor unseen. Back in the study, Poirot faced the household. Evelyn, Jonathan, Voss, Hargrove, Clara, pale but upright. The mechanism is clear. Someone used theatrical effects, phosphorus, recordings, wires, to simulate a haunting. Lord Blackwood, already agitated by the document, was driven to cardiac arrest. Then the murderer entered via the tunnel to lock the door from within and stage the impossible crime. He held up the brass key. This was returned to the Bible after use, sloppy, and the feather, he produced a second envelope. Inside, a lock of black hair, synthetic, from the attic wig. A calling card. Our killer enjoys drama. Evelyn swayed. But who? Poirot's gaze swept them. That, mes amis, is the next act. Chapter 4. The Butler's Secret. The telephone receiver trembled in Hargrove's hand as though it were alive. The butler's scar, usually a pale slash against weathered skin, now blazed crimson, as if the blood beneath had risen in protest. He set the instrument down with the care of a man defusing a bomb. "Dr. Forsyth," he repeated, voice hollow. "Post-mortem complete. Lord Blackwood was injected. Base of the skull. Curare, he thinks. Enough to paralyze the heart within minutes. The terror on his face. Rigor mortis, not fear." A collective exhale rippled through the study. Lady Evelyn sank into the late lord's chair, gloved fingers pressed to her lips. Jonathan swore softly and reached for the tantalus, then remembered the cyanide Poirot had identified and let his hand fall. Dr. Voss removed his spectacles, polished them furiously on a handkerchief, replaced them, and still looked blind. Poirot alone remained unmoved, save for the faintest curl at the edges of his moustache. Précisément. The ghost was a diversion, the needle the coup de grâce. We seek now not a sorcerer, but a poisoner with anatomical precision. He turned to Hargrove. You broke the door at 6 a.m. The body was already cold. Stone cold, sir. Stiff as a statue. Rigour begins within 2 to 4 hours. Death, then, between 2 and 4 a.m. Consistent with Clara's scream at 2:30. The puncture. Show me exactly. Hargrove hesitated, then stepped behind the desk. He bent the late Lord's chair forward and indicated a spot just above where the collar would sit. Here, sir. Dr. Forsyth shaved the hair. Tiny mark like a mosquito bite. Poirot produced his lens. A faint bruise, pinprick centre. Curare blocks neuromuscular transmission. The victim feels terror, cannot move, cannot cry out beyond a gasp. The face contorts in extremis. Our murderer is educated. Curare is rare outside medical circles. Voss cleared his throat. South American tribes use it on blow darts. I have a sample, in my room, for research. His voice cracked on the last word. Jonathan rounded on him. You poisonous little— Silence! Poirot's command cracked like a whip. Accusations without proof are the luxury of fools. Hargrove, you were first on the scene after Clara's scream. Your movements that night, precise. The butler straightened, military bearing reasserting itself. Retired at 11:40, sir. Checked the doors, banked the hall fire. Passed the study at midnight. Light beneath the door, no sound. Went to my pantry. Read the Police Gazette until 1. Heard the scream at 2:30. Ran upstairs. Miss Clara was already at the study door, hammering. I fetched the poker, forced the lock, found his lordship. His voice faltered. Face twisted something awful. Thought apoplexy. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You touched nothing? Only his lordship's wrist, for the pulse. Yet the chair was overturned, papers scattered. You righted nothing. Hargrove's scar twitched. No, sir. Left it for the police. Poirot nodded, then addressed the room. We will now search every chamber. Wilkins, accompany me. The rest remain here under Hargrove's eye. The butler's pantry lay behind the green baize door, a Spartan cell with a narrow bed, a deal table, a single chair. On the table, the Police Gazette, a pipe, a tin of Hercule. Poirot lifted the mattress. Nothing. Beneath the table, a loose floorboard. He pried it up. Inside, a small cedar box. Within the box, wrapped in oilskin, a glass syringe, plunger still slick with residue, a file labelled Curare, 1,500, and a folded sheet of notepaper. Poirot unfolded it with tweezers. You know what to do. Midnight. The tunnel, $500 on completion. Burn this. V. Hargrove, summoned, stared at the cash as though it were a snake. Not mine, sir. I swear on my war medals. Poirot noted the man's hands. Scarred knuckles, yes, but the fingers thick, a working man's. The syringe required delicacy. The scar on your face, from the war? Passchendaele, sir. Shrapnel. Yet you were a sapper. Tunnels, explosives. You know the priest's hole? Hargrove nodded stiffly. Mapped it as a lad. Runs from ice house to cellar, with a spur to the study. Boarded up in 14 after a maid vanished. Poirot pocketed the evidence. You will remain in the servants' hall until I send for you. Next, Dr. Voss's room, a chaos of books, tribal masks, a human skull labelled Homo sapiens, Dartmoor, 4000 BC. On the desk, an open notebook, page-headed curare, paralytic dosage. Beside it, a fountain pen, ink still wet. Poirot lifted the blotter. Beneath, a carbon copy of the note found in Hargrove's room, the V identical. Voss, confronted in the study, went the colour of old parchment. "A forgery! Someone frames me!" "Carbon paper does not lie," Poirot interrupted. "You supplied the poison, but did you administer it?" Lady Evelyn's voice cut across. "Enough games. My husband kept a revolver in the muniments room. If there's a killer among us—" She moved toward the door. Poirot blocked her. "Non, madame. The tunnel is the key, Wilkins." The chauffeur led them down the priest's hole, lanterns swinging. 20 yards along, the side passage Hargrove had mentioned, now cleared of rubble, fresh earth piled neatly. At its end, a small chamber, brick-vaulted, lit by a single candle stub. On a crate, a woman's kid glove, monogrammed EB, a half-empty bottle of luminol, a spool of fishing line, and a child's Guy Fawkes mask, painted phosphorescent white. Jonathan picked up the glove. Evelyn's. She wore them at dinner. Lady Evelyn's face was a mask of ice. Anyone could have taken them. Poirot knelt. In the dust, heel prints, small but broader than Clara's. A man's shoe, size 8, with a distinctive nail pattern. He photographed it. "Wilkins, your boots?" The chauffeur lifted a foot. Identical nails. "Everyone in the county uses Hobbs the cobbler, sir." Back in the study, Poirot assembled the pieces. The murderer entered via the tunnel after midnight, wearing the glowing mask, trailing luminol on a string to create the cold light Clara saw. Lord Blackwood rose in terror, chair overturned. The killer stepped behind, injected curare at the medulla, paralysis instant, then staged the locked room, exited below, returned the key to the Bible. But one mistake. He held up the syringe. "Curare degrades in light. This sample is fresh, prepared yesterday." Voss lunged for the door. Wilkins caught him. "Easy, doctor." Poirot continued. "The note implicates Voss and Hargrove. Yet the handwriting, observe the loop of the Y, matches Lady Evelyn's in the household accounts. A triangle. Voss supplies poison. Hargrove provides access. Evelyn plans. Motive? The document proving bigamy. With Reginald dead, the evidence could be destroyed." Evelyn laughed. High, brittle. "Absurd! I was in my room." "Were you?" Poirot produced the Riviera photograph. "This man, your lover before marriage?" "Reginald discovered the affair and the document simultaneously. You silenced him." She lunged for the fireplace poker. Jonathan intercepted, twisting her wrist until she dropped it. "Stepmother, you bitch." Hargrove stepped forward, voice steady. "I'll confess what's mine. I cleared the tunnel, thought it rats, found the glove, kept it, but I never touched his lordship." Poirot nodded. "You are a pawn, Hargrove. The Queen," he indicated Evelyn, "sacrifices pawns." The telephone rang again. Wilkins answered. "Local constabulary, sir. On their way. Fog's lifted." Poirot smiled. "Bon, the net closes." Chapter 5. The Maid's Testimony. The crimson droplets pattered onto the green leather desk like slow, deliberate rain. 1, 2, 3. Each striking the exact spot where Lord Blackwood's head had rested in death. The chandelier above swayed, though no wind stirred the air. Its crystals chimed a thin, discordant note. Poirot's gaze flicked upward, then to the ceiling rose where the fixing bolt entered plaster. A hairline crack zigzagged from it, weeping red. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the house itself bleeds." Wilkins snatched a silver tray to catch the flow. The liquid was warm, viscous, human blood still pumping. Lady Evelyn gave a choked cry and pressed a handkerchief to her lips. Jonathan stared as though hypnotized. Dr. Voss began muttering in Latin, crossing himself. Only Hargrove moved with purpose. He seized the fire tongs and struck the chandelier's central rod. It rang like a cracked bell, but the bleeding stopped. Poirot climbed onto the desk, heedless of patent shoes on mahogany. With a penknife, he probed the crack. A thin copper tube, no thicker than a knitting needle, protruded, its tip wet. He traced it backward through the plaster to a concealed cavity. Inside, a rubber bladder punctured, connected to the tube by a clockwork valve. The mechanism had released its contents on a timer, set, he calculated, for 11:47 a.m., precisely 12 hours after the constable's telephone call. "Another theatrical flourish," he announced, descending. "Our murderer enjoys encores." The study door burst open. Clara Thorne stood framed in it, apron askew, eyes wild. A bruise darkened her temple, but fury overrode fear. "I remember now," she gasped. "Everything." Poirot guided her to a chair. "Speak, mademoiselle, from the beginning." Clara's voice shook but grew steadier. "It were the night before his lordship died. I was turning down beds when I heard voices, angry, in the muniments room. Lady Evelyn and Dr. Voss. I hid in the linen cupboard." She closed her eyes. "Her ladyship said, 'The document must vanish tonight. Reginald's too close.' The doctor answered, 'Curare will silence him, but the room must be locked from within. I've prepared the mask and the light.' Then Mr. Hargrove's voice, 'The tunnel's clear, midnight.' I ran, but someone saw me, struck me from behind. Next I knew, I woke in the attic." Jonathan rounded on Evelyn. "You planned it all." Evelyn's face was marble. "Lies from a thieving slut. She stole my glove." "Non." Poirot produced the kid glove from the tunnel. "Monogrammed EB, yes, but the stitching is fresh. Purchased in Plymouth 3 weeks ago, according to the receipt in the lining. You replaced an older pair, madame, to create confusion." He turned to Clara. "Continue." "After the blow, I woke in my room, head aching, mouth gagged. Lady Evelyn stood over me. 'Say nothing, or you'll join him.' She locked me in till morning. Then, last night, someone dragged me to the attic, dressed me in the ghost gown, hit me again. I never saw the face." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The gown! Where is it now?" "Burned in the kitchen boiler. I smelled the smoke at dawn." Hargrove spoke for the first time since the chandelier. "I banked the boiler myself, sir. Nothing but coal. Yet ash remains." Poirot produced a twist of grey fibre from his pocket, the same metallic ash found on the study carpet. "Synthetic silk, treated with phosphorus. The gown was destroyed to eliminate evidence, but the ash betrays it." He paced, reconstructing. "The conspiracy. Voss supplies curare and theatrical effects. Hargrove clears the tunnel. Lady Evelyn provides motive and alibi. But Clara's eavesdropping threatened exposure. She was silenced, first with threats, then with violence. The attic assault was to frame her as the ghost and discredit her testimony." Voss laughed nervously. "Fantastical. I was playing cards with Jonathan." "Until 2 a.m., Poirot interrupted. "Death occurred between 2 and 4. Ample time for you to descend through the tunnel, administer the poison, stage the room, and return. Jonathan slept off his whiskey. Hargrove patrolled the wrong corridor. Evelyn locked herself in with a book, witnessed by no one." He produced the brass key. "This was returned to the Bible after use by Hargrove, under duress. The note in his pantry was planted to implicate him. Observe, he held the note beside Evelyn's household accounts. The slant of the T, the flourish of the Y, identical. Evelyn's composure cracked. You cannot prove. I can." Poirot opened his notebook. The puncture wound required precision, medical knowledge, Voss. The tunnel required strength, Hargrove. The motive required desperation, Evelyn. But the timing required coordination. The clockwork in the chandelier was set yesterday, after the constable's call, by someone who knew the police were coming. He turned to Clara. "One detail more. The locket Lord Blackwood gave you. What is its clasp?" Clara opened it. Inside, beside the miniature, a tiny compartment. Poirot extracted a folded scrap of vellum, the missing page of the bigamy document. He hid the evidence where only you would find it, insurance against betrayal. Evelyn lunged for the fireplace poker again. This time Clara intercepted, catching her wrist with surprising strength. "You killed him for a title," the maid hissed. "He loved me, truly." Jonathan stared at Clara as though seeing her anew. "You and father?" "A daughter's love," Clara said fiercely. "He was kind when no one else was. Said I was the child he never had with her." Poirot raised a hand. "Enough. The pieces fit, but one anomaly remains." He produced the white feather from the letterbox. "This was delivered at 3:17 a.m. when the lights failed. Someone outside the house, or with access to the front door." Wilkins cleared his throat. "Begging pardon, sir. The front door lock was oiled yesterday, by me on her ladyship's orders. Said it was sticking." Evelyn smiled thinly. "A prudent housewife. Or a murderer ensuring silent entry." Poirot faced the room. "The net closes. Voss for poison, Hargrove for access, Evelyn for orchestration, but the feather—" A knock at the study door. Constable Beach, helmet under arm, rain dripping from his cape. "Mr. Poirot, Inspector Japp on the telephone from London. Says it's urgent, about a woman matching Lady Evelyn's description seen boarding the night train to Plymouth with a medical bag." Evelyn's eyes darted to the window. Fog still cloaked the moor, but distant sirens wailed, closer now. She backed toward the French doors. Poirot stepped between her and escape. "Non, madame, the game is up." Chapter 6. The Guest's Folklore. The music box tinkled its macabre nursery rhyme. The eye, milky, unblinking, fixed on the ceiling as though watching the chandelier's last crimson drops. The tune warped, slowed, then died with a metallic sigh. Constable Beach crossed himself. Wilkins swore under his breath. Clara pressed both hands to her mouth. Only Poirot moved, swift, decisive, kneeling to lift the box with a silk handkerchief. The eye was glass, exquisitely painted. The iris a perfect match for Lord Blackwood's in the portrait above the mantel. "A prop," he announced, voice calm. "From a taxidermist or theatrical supplier. Note the serial number etched on the iris. London, Wardour Street. Our murderer shops with discernment." Lady Evelyn laughed, a high, brittle sound. "You'll pin every conjurer's trick on me, monsieur. That eye could belong to anyone." "No, madame, it belongs to the performance." Poirot set the box on the desk beside the syringe, the glove, the feather. "We have a triangle. Voss, Hargrove, Evelyn. But triangles have angles, sharp ones. Dr. Voss, you will now explain the eye." Dr. Elias Voss had gone the colour of old parchment. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chill. I acquired it for research. Optical illusions in folklore. The evil eye, the Gorgon gaze. Spare us the lecture." Poirot produced a ledger from his pocket. Voss's own notebook, seized during the search. Page 43. Glass eye, hazel, 1:6 scale. Purchased 28th October, $3. Delivered to Dark House 1st November. The day before the murder, and here he flipped to a sketch. The eye wired to a spring mechanism, labelled startle device, study deployment. Voss opened his mouth, closed it. Jonathan stepped forward, fists clenched. "You supplied the poison, the mask, the curare, and this obscenity. For what? A footnote in some mouldy journal?" "For $10,000, Poirot said quietly. The sum Lady Evelyn promised you to authenticate the bigamy document as forgery, then to silence Reginald when he discovered the truth. You needed funds. Your university post was revoked for irregularities with grant money. Blackmail, no? Voss sagged. She said it would be painless. A heart attack. No one would know. Yet you added the eye. Poirot's tone was almost gentle. A flourish. To ensure terror, masked the injection. You descended the tunnel at 2:15 a.m., wearing the phosphorescent mask. Lord Blackwood rose, chair overturned. You stepped behind, injected curare at the medulla. Paralysis in seconds. Then you placed the music box beneath the trapdoor, set to trigger later, alibi insurance. But the eye was vanity. You wanted the legend to grow. Constable Beach snapped handcuffs onto Voss's wrists. Elias Voss, I arrest you for the murder of Lord Reginald Blackwood. Wait! Poirot raised a hand. The good doctor is a pawn. The Queen still moves. He turned to Lady Evelyn. You orchestrated, but you did not act alone. The tunnel required two. One to inject, one to manage the lights, the sounds, the blood. Hargrove's strength, Voss's science, and your direction. But the feather at 3:17 a.m., that was an outsider. Evelyn's smile was thin. A poacher, perhaps. The moor is full of them. Non, the feather is from a white leghorn hen. Domestic, not wild. And the blood is chicken blood, mixed with glycerol to stay. Liquid. A countrywoman's trick. Poirot produced a second envelope. Inside, a single white feather, identical to the first, but clean. This was found in the kitchen boiler ash, beside the synthetic silk. Clara burned the gown, but not the feather. Someone kept a spare. He faced Hargrove. You oiled the front door, you cleared the tunnel, but you also kept poultry, 6 white leghorns in the old stables. The constable's dogs found the coop this morning, 1 hen missing a tail feather. Hargrove's scar twitched. I acted under duress. Her ladyship threatened to turn me out without a character. 30 years' service. Enough to hang a man, Beach growled. Poirot silenced him with a look. Hargrove is a tool, not the hand. Madame, the net is complete. Evelyn backed toward the French windows. Fog still cloaked the moor, but the sirens were closer now. 2 cars, perhaps 3. You'll never prove. I already have. Poirot produced the Riviera photograph. This man, Captain Marcus Lyle, missing since 1929, presumed drowned. But the scratch across his face was made by a diamond ring. Yours, madame. The stone is chipped. I found the fragment in the tunnel dust. He held up a tiny sparkle of light. Lyle did not drown. He blackmailed you. Reginald discovered the affair and the document simultaneously. You silenced both threats with 1 murder. Evelyn's hand went to her mourning ring. The diamond was indeed flawed. A hairline crack. You cannot... Watch me. Poirot opened the desk drawer, revealing a small reel-to-reel recorder, modern, German-made. Installed last night. Every word since breakfast recorded. Your confession to Clara, Voss's admission, Hargrove's complicity, all preserved. The sirens stopped outside. Car doors slammed. Inspector Japp's voice boomed in the hall. Poirot, you in there? Poirot smiled. Enter, mon ami. Japp strode in, raincoat dripping, followed by 2 sergeants. Got your wire. Lady Evelyn Blackwood, Dr. Elias Voss, Mr. Hargrove. You are all under arrest for the murder of Lord Reginald Blackwood. Anything you say. Evelyn lunged for the French windows. Jonathan caught her arm. It's over, stepmother. She sagged, suddenly old. He was going to ruin us. The title, the estate, everything. Marcus was alive, demanding money. Reginald found the letters. I had no choice. Voss was led away muttering about folklore. Hargrove went silently, head high. Clara watched, tears on her cheeks, the locket clutched tight. Poirot addressed Japp. The weapon, syringe in the pantry, curare in Voss's room, tunnel access from the ice house, the eye, the blood, the music box, all props. The locked room was never locked from within. The bolt was shot from below via a wire through the keyhole, retrieved the same way. Japp whistled. Clever. And the girl? Clara. Innocent. A witness, not a killer. Protect her. The prisoners were bundled into cars. Poirot lingered in the study. He opened the music box again. The glass eye stared up. Then, with a soft click, the iris rotated, revealing a microfilm canister. Inside, the original bigamy certificate, photographed in miniature. Insurance, Poirot murmured. Lord Blackwood's final card. He slipped the canister into his waistcoat. Outside, the fog lifted. Sunlight touched the moor for the first time in days. Dark House stood silent. Its secrets bled out. Chapter 7. Gathering Clues. The Daimler's engine had barely turned over when Poirot's gloved fingers closed on the rook's feather. The blood was warm, impossible given the bird's flight through cold air, yet it pulsed faintly against the kidskin as though the moor itself had a heartbeat. He flipped the feather. Evelyn's handwriting, spidery but unmistakable. The curse is not ended. Ask Jonathan about the cellar. Wilkins braked on the gravel. Sir, riversez, mon ami, we return to the house. Poirot's voice was soft steel. The play has an epilogue. Dark House loomed again, its windows blind in the sudden sunlight. Japp's cars were gone. Only the constable's bicycle leaned against the portico. Inside, the hall smelled of wet stone and extinguished candles. Jonathan Blackwood stood by the suit of armour, a half-packed valise at his feet, face pale as parchment. Poirot! His voice cracked. I thought you'd left. No, your stepmother sends a message. Poirot held up the feather. The cellar, monsieur. Now. Jonathan's eyes darted to the baize door. There's nothing except truth. Poirot's grip on the young man's arm was gentle but immovable. You are heir to more than a title. Lead. The cellar stairs descended in a spiral of worn oak, the air growing colder, damper, redolent of earth and old wine. At the bottom, a vaulted chamber stretched. Racks of dusty bottles, a brick archway sealed with a modern iron gate. Beyond, darkness. Jonathan fumbled with keys. Father kept the best vintages here. Port from 1870. Claret. Open, the gate screeched. Poirot's torch cut the gloom, revealing a second chamber, smaller, stone-flagged. In the centre, a deal table, upon it a leather folio, a lantern, and a single object that gleamed like a malevolent star. A silver hypodermic syringe, plunger drawn back, needle glittering. Jonathan stared. I've never... Poirot lifted the folio. Inside, architectural plans of Dark House, annotated in red ink. A dotted line ran from the icehouse tunnel to this cellar, then upward, through the foundations into the muniments room. Beside the plans, a ledger. Payments to M. Lyle, $500 quarterly, 1929-1933. And beneath, a photograph. Jonathan, aged 18, arm around a smiling man. Captain Marcus Lyle, the drowned lover. Your stepmother's insurance, Poirot said quietly. Blackmail to keep you silent, but you discovered the payments. Jonathan's laugh was bitter. Last month, Father showed me the books. Said Evelyn was bleeding the estate. I confronted her. She laughed, said Lyle was alive, hiding in Plymouth. If I spoke, she'd ruin me, claim I'd helped silence Father to protect the title. Poirot's torch swept the walls. Bricks had been removed and replaced recently. Mortar still pale. He pressed one. It shifted. Behind, a cavity. Inside, wrapped in oilskin, a second music box, identical to the first, and a glass phial labelled curare, fresh batch, third novice. A note in Evelyn's hand. For the heir, should he prove troublesome. Jonathan swayed. She meant to kill me too. No, to frame you. The syringe, the plans, the payments, all planted after the arrest, a contingency, but the feather, Poirot examined it under his lens. The blood is yours, monsieur. Type AB, rare. A pinprick on your thumb this morning, perhaps while packing. Jonathan lifted his hand. Yes, a fresh puncture, crusted. I thought I'd caught it on the valise. Evelyn had an accomplice outside, someone to deliver the feather to watch. Poirot's gaze hardened. Clara mentioned a stable lad. New, hired last week. Name? Tompkins, quiet sort. Slept over the tack room. They climbed the stairs. In the stable yard, the tack room door hung open. Inside, a cot, a primus stove, a rucksack. Poirot opened it. A white leghorn hen trussed and alive, tail feathers plucked, a bottle of chicken blood mixed with glycerol, a postcard of Plymouth Hoe addressed to T. Lyle, Esk. Marcus Lyle's son, perhaps. Jonathan exhaled. The captain's bastard. Evelyn kept him close, insurance upon insurance. Poirot pocketed the evidence. The curse was never Arabella. It was greed, layered like an onion. Evelyn, married for title, murdered for security, blackmailed with the past. Voss and Hargrove were tools, you, the final obstacle. Upstairs, the study felt smaller now. The secrets bled out. Poirot assembled the household. Clara, Wilkins, the cook, the undermaids. The case is closed. Lady Evelyn will hang for murder, Voss and Hargrove for conspiracy. The title passes clean to Monsieur Jonathan, legitimate, despite the bigamy. The document was a forgery, planted by Evelyn to destabilize Reginald. Jonathan sank into the late lord's chair. What now? Now you rebuild. Dark House is yours. Burn the props, seal the tunnel, honor the truth. Poirot placed the miniature bigamy certificate, now revealed as Evelyn's handiwork, on the desk, and hire no more Tompkinses. Clara approached, eyes dry. The locket, father's last gift. May I keep it? Always. Poirot bowed over her hand. You were his conscience. Outside, the Daimler waited. Japp's car had returned. Empty, the inspector inside telephoning London. Poirot paused on the steps. One last detail, Japp. The chandelier blood, chicken, mostly, Japp grunted. But mixed with human, Lord Blackwood's. Taken post-mortem, pumped through the tube, sick mind. Evelyn's farewell. She knew the timer would trigger during our gathering. Poirot climbed into the car. Drive, Wilkins. London calls. As the manor shrank in the rear window, Jonathan appeared on the portico, the locket glinting in his hand. He raised it in salute. The rooks wheeled overhead, but their cries sounded almost like laughter now, free of curses. Chapter 8. The Second Incident. The Daimler's tires hissed on wet tarmac as the wireless bulletin ended. Wilkins's knuckles whitened on the wheel. The moor rolled past in streaks of grey and gold. Poirot sat motionless, the rook's feather still in his gloved hand. Evelyn's final words, "The house keeps its own," burning behind his eyes like phosphorus. "Turn around," he said quietly. Wilkins met his gaze in the mirror. "Sir, Dark House, vite." The car slewed in a spray of gravel and roared back toward the manor. Poirot's mind raced faster than the engine. Cyanide capsule, smuggled in a ring, a tooth, a hem, classic tradecraft, but Evelyn had been searched twice. Someone inside the police van or at the station had passed it. The note, though, "The house keeps its own," was no suicide's flourish. It was a taunt, a door left ajar. They reached the gates as the sun bled into the west. Dark House stood black against the sky, windows lit like watchful eyes. Japp's car was still in the sweep. A second vehicle, local constabulary, blocked the door. Inspector Japp emerged, face grim. "She was alive when we left Tavistock," he said without greeting. "Screamed the whole way. Curses, threats, Arabella's name. Then, 10 miles out, silence. Found her slumped, foam on the lips. Capsule dissolved in her mouth, note in her hand. He passed over a scrap of prison notepaper. The ink already browning. The house keeps its own. You will all follow. Poirot's moustache bristled. The handwriting, identical to the feather, but she was cuffed, searched. Japp's jaw worked. The WPC swears no one near her. Yet the capsule was glass, shattered remnants in her throat. Someone palmed it during the transfer. No. Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. The capsule was already there, sewn into the lining of her mourning veil. I felt the stiffness when she embraced Jonathan at arrest, a Blackwood tradition, widow's veils with secret pockets for jewels or poison. He strode inside. Jonathan met him in the hall, face ashen, a telegram trembling in his hand. From the solicitor, he whispered, Father's will, codicil dated 3 days before death. If Evelyn dies by violence or suicide, the estate passes to a trust, administered by Dr. Voss. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Voss is in custody. Jonathan swallowed. The trust names a deputy. Marcus Lyle's son, Tompkins, the stable lad. He vanished after. You left. The little grey cells flared. The second incident, come. They descended to the cellar. The iron gate stood open. The hidden chamber beyond was lit by a single lantern. The deal table was bare. Syringe, plans, file, all gone. In their place, a fresh pool of blood still wet, and a single white feather floating in it. Poirot knelt. The blood was warm, type AB Jonathan's. A scalpel lay beside the pool, blade filmed red. On the wall, scratched into the stone with the scalpel's tip, the cellar remembers. Jonathan's hand flew to his throat. I nicked myself shaving. No, you were bled deliberately. Poirot's torch swept the floor. Footprints, small, heeled, leading to a section of brickwork that had swung inward on concealed hinges. A narrow passage, newly cleared, exhaling damp earth and the faint sweetness of decay. Japp arrived, panting. Found this in the stable. He held up a rucksack, Tompkins's. Inside, a police uniform stolen, a glass capsule identical to Evelyn's, a map of the manor with the cellar passage marked in red. The lad played courier, Poirot said. Passed the capsule to Evelyn during the transfer, disguised as a constable. But why suicide? To activate the codicil, Jonathan said dully. With Evelyn dead, Voss inherits control via Tompkins. They'll bleed the estate dry, then vanish. Poirot's gaze hardened. Not yet. The passage, where does it lead? They followed its single file. Poirot, Japp, Jonathan, Wilkins with a shotgun. The tunnel twisted, brick giving way to natural stone, the air growing colder. 20 yards in, a side chamber, a stone sarcophagus lid askew. Inside, a skeleton in rotting velvet, a silver chalice clutched to the breastbone. A brass plate read, Lady Arabella Blackwood, 1692. Jonathan stared. The real curse. No, a prop. Poirot lifted the chalice. Inside, a modern wax cylinder, Edison recording. He carried it upstairs to the gramophone in the drawing room. The needle dropped. A woman's voice, Evelyn's, crackled. If you hear this, I am dead. The house keeps its own. Tompkins has the key to the vault beneath the chapel. All the gold Arabella hid before her burning. Take it and curse the Blackwoods forever. The cylinder ended in a hiss. Japp swore. A treasure hunt. Insurance, Poirot corrected. Evelyn recorded this weeks ago. Tompkins was to play it after her death, luring Jonathan, or us, to the chapel, a trap. They raced to the chapel, a ruined Norman shell in the grounds, ivy-choked. The door hung open. Inside, moonlight silvered the altar. Beneath it, a flagstone had been lifted, a rope ladder descended into darkness. Japp drew his revolver. I'll go first. No. Poirot's hand stayed him. Listen. From the vault came a low, rhythmic thud. Metal on stone. They descended. The vault was a natural cavern, walls glistening with damp. In the centre, Tompkins stripped too, shirt sleeves, swinging a pickaxe at a brick wall. Behind him, a wooden crate, already pried open, spilled gold coins, Spanish doubloons, glittering like dragon's teeth. Tompkins spun, eyes wild. "Too late! It's mine!" Wilkins levelled the shotgun. "Drop it!" The lad laughed, manic, Evelyn's laugh in a younger throat. "The curse is real! Arabella's gold, cursed every Blackwood who touched it. Father tried to melt it down, went mad. Evelyn promised me half if I finished the job." He lunged for a satchel at his feet. Jap fired, a warning shot that shattered a stalactite. Tompkins froze. Poirot stepped forward. "The gold is evidence, the curse is greed. You delivered the capsule, planted the feather, bled Jonathan to fake a haunting. But you missed one detail." He produced the glass eye from the music box. "This was wired to a pressure plate beneath the sarcophagus lid. You moved the body, disturbed the trap. A secondary mechanism, set to flood the vault if tampered with." He pointed upward. A trickle of water had begun, seeping through cracks, widening. The cavern was below the water table, a forgotten culvert perhaps. Tompkins's face crumpled. "She said it was safe. Evelyn lied." Poirot's voice was almost pitying. "As she lied to Voss, to Hargrove, to you, climb." They scrambled up the ladder as the water rose, black and icy. On the chapel floor, Jap cuffed Tompkins. The gold was recovered, 40,000, enough to save the estate. The sarcophagus held only Arabella's bones, moved centuries ago by smugglers. Back in the hall, Jonathan poured whiskey with a steady hand. "It's over." Poirot accepted a glass. "Presque. One last act." He opened the gramophone again. Beneath the wax cylinder, a second note, in Reginald's hand. "If you find this, the curse is broken. Give the gold to charity. Live clean. R.B." Jonathan smiled. First genuine smile Poirot had seen. He knew. Outside, the moon rose full. Dark House stood quiet, its shadows natural now. The rooks had gone to roost. Chapter 9. Unmasking the Phantom. The telegram trembled in Poirot's hand as the Devon Bell steamed out of Tavistock. Vault flooded, gold gone. Tompkins escaped custody. Jap. On the reverse, Evelyn's spidery script. "The house keeps its own." The ink was fresh. Too fresh for a dead woman. The train lurched. Poirot's reflection in the window looked back, moustache bristling with fury. He had been played. "Wilkins!" he barked into the intercom. "Return to Dark House, immediately!" The Daimler met them at the station, engine still warm. Wilkins had anticipated. They tore back along the moorland road, fog rolling in again like a closing curtain. Poirot's mind reassembled the puzzle at lightning speed. Only one explanation. A Confederate still inside the house, with access to Evelyn's handwriting, the cellar, and the police van. Someone who had never been suspected. They burst through the front door. Jonathan met them in the hall, shotgun in hand, face haggard. "Poirot! Thank God! Jap's men are searching the grounds. Tompkins was seen near the ice house an hour ago, and Clara," his voice cracked. "Clara's missing." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "When?" "Since dawn. Left a note. Gone to the chapel to pray, but the chapel's locked." They ran. The chapel door stood ajar, moonlight spilling across the altar. Inside, the flagstone was raised again. The rope ladder dangled into the vault. Water lapped at the top rungs, black oily, rising fast. A single lantern glowed below. Poirot descended first. The cavern was half flooded. The crate of gold was gone. In its place, Clara Thorne, bound and gagged, eyes wide with terror. Beside her, Tompkins, dead throat cut, the scalpel from the cellar embedded in his neck. Blood swirled in the water like ink. Jonathan reached Clara, cut her bonds. She gasped. It wasn't Tompkins. He was already dead when I got here. Someone dragged me down, hit me. Poirot's torch swept the walls. Fresh scratches. The phantom lives. And beneath, a hidden panel, newly mortised, swung open at his touch. A narrow tunnel, dry, leading upward. He followed it alone, revolver drawn. The passage climbed steeply, emerging behind the muniment's room fireplace. The secret door was ajar. Inside, Hargrove, still in handcuffs, slumped in a chair, throat bruised, strangled with his own scarf. A note pinned to his chest in Evelyn's hand. The butler did it, after all. Poirot's lips curled. No, the butler was the last victim. Footsteps overhead. He raced upstairs to the study. The room was lit by a single green lamp, the same lamp Lord Blackwood had used. At the desk sat Dr. Elias Voss, free, uncuffed, a Webley revolver on the blotter, a smile on his face. "Bravo, Poirot," Voss said softly. "You're almost in time." Poirot levelled his own weapon. "You escaped with Tompkins's help. The flood was a diversion. You killed him, then Hargrove, to tie loose ends. But Evelyn was the diversion." Voss's eyes gleamed. "I gave her the capsule myself, in the police van. She thought it was escape. I knew it was silence. The handwriting? I forged it for years. Her letters, her notes, her will. The gold is already on a lorry to Plymouth. By dawn, I'll be in Lisbon." Poirot stepped closer. "The eye, the music box, the blood, your theatrical touches. But you missed one detail." He reached into his waistcoat and produced the microfilm canister from the music box. "Reginald's insurance, the real bigamy document, proving the title is legitimate. Evelyn's forgery was the lie. You authenticated the fake to destabilize the estate, then murdered to inherit via the codicil. But the gold was the prize." Voss's smile faltered. "You can't prove. I already have." Poirot gestured to the door. Japp entered with 2 sergeants, shotguns, levelled. "The lorry was intercepted at the crossroads. Your driver sings like a canary. And Clara—" He turned as Jonathan helped the maid into the room, her gag removed. "Clara recorded everything on the gramophone wax cylinder, hidden in the locket. Your confession, Voss, from the moment you entered." Voss lunged for the revolver. Japp fired, a warning shot that shattered the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Chaos, shouts, furniture crashing, a grunt of pain. When the lights flared back, Wilkins had found the fuse box. Voss lay on the rug. Jonathan's shotgun at his temple. "I trusted you," Jonathan said, voice raw. "You were father's friend." "I was his parasite," Voss spat. 30 years of research, paid for by Blackwood gold. When Reginald found the real document, he cut me off. Evelyn promised half if I helped. I took all." Poirot knelt beside him. "The phantom was never Arabella. It was you, moving through the tunnels, staging the terror, injecting the curare. You strangled Hargrove to frame him, slit Tompkins's throat to silence him, kidnapped Clara to lure us back. But the house does not keep its own. Justice does." Japp cuffed Voss. "Elias Voss, you are charged with murder, conspiracy, theft." The study door creaked. Clara stood there, locket open, the tiny wax cylinder in her palm. "He missed this," she whispered. "Lord Blackwood taught me how to use the gramophone. I recorded everything since the attic." Voss laughed. "Manic, broken. The curse wins." "No." Poirot's voice was gentle. "The curse was greed. It ends tonight." They led Voss out into the dawn. The fog had lifted. The moor glittered with frost. The gold was recovered from the lorry, hidden in crates marked folklore specimens. The real bigamy document, enlarged from the microfilm, proved the Blackwood line legitimate since 1689. Arabella had been the legal wife. The London marriage, a clerical error. Jonathan stood on the steps, Clara at his side. "What now?" "Now you sell the gold," Poirot said. "Pay the debts, restore the house, marry the girl if you wish. She is braver than any baronetess. And burn the tunnels." As the Daimler pulled away for the last time, Poirot looked back. Dark House stood bathed in sunlight, its shadows banished. The rooks wheeled overhead, but their cries were ordinary now. Birds, not ghosts. Chapter 10. The Final Revelation. The Devon bell thundered toward London, its rhythm a metronome for Poirot's thoughts. The newspaper lay open on the table. Mystery at Dark House. Final twist. Hidden vault collapses. Second skeleton. Female 17th century. Chalice fused to bones. Inscription: Arabella's Revenge. The print was crisp, the photograph grainy, a skull grinning beneath a silver cup, ribs entwined with centuries of rust. Poirot folded the paper with geometric precision. Bah! Journalists! They see curses where there are only consequences. Yet the little grey cells stirred. The chalice had been in the first sarcophagus, moved, then returned. The inscription knew. Someone had staged a final act after his departure. Someone still inside Dark House. He reached for the intercom. "Wilkins, return to Tavistock. We have one more curtain." The Daimler met them at the station, engine idling like a patient hound. They reached Dark House at dusk. The manor stood bathed in blood-orange light, windows glowing. Jonathan greeted them on the steps, shotgun slung over his shoulder, Clara beside him, hand in hand. "You saw the paper," Jonathan said. "It's madness. The vault collapsed at noon. Japp's men dug all afternoon. The skeleton was there, but the chalice was the one from the cellar. And the inscription, he led them inside. The chapel was cordoned with police tape. Japp stood amid the rubble, helmet under arm, face grim. "Thought you'd come, Poirot. Look at this." The vault had caved inward, revealing a second chamber, natural limestone, dripping with moisture. In the centre, the skeleton, female, petite, wrists bound with silver wire. The chalice was fused to the sternum, molten silver poured in life, hardened in death. On the inner rim, etched with a nail, Arabella's Revenge. Poirot knelt, torch beam cutting the gloom. Not 17th century. The wire is modern, sterling, hallmarked 1929. The bones, bleached with peroxide. A forgery, Japp swore. But the collapse, deliberate. Poirot pointed to the ceiling. A charge had been set. Gelignite, military. Residue on the limestone. Someone wanted this discovered after I left. A final curse to taint the Blackwood name. Jonathan's face hardened. Voss is in Dartmoor. Tomkins dead. Hargrove hanged himself in his cell last night. Scarf to the bars. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Hargrove was strangled. The scarf was staging. Someone silenced him before he talked. Clara gasped. There was a maid, Elsie. New, hired after Tomkins vanished. Quiet, always in the chapel praying. They ran to the servants' hall. Elsie's room was empty, her bed made, apron folded. On the pillow, a single white feather stained with fresh blood. Beneath, a note in Evelyn's hand. The house keeps its own. Poirot's mind raced. Elsie is Arabella's descendant, the real curse. They followed footprints, heeled small, through the kitchen into the walled garden. The potting shed door hung open. Inside, Elsie, 25, black-haired, eyes burning with centuries of hate. She held a Webley revolver, Voss's, levelled at Clara. Arabella Trevose, she said, voice low. My ancestress, burned for witchcraft, land stolen. I've waited tables, cleaned grates, watched the Blackwoods rot. Evelyn promised justice. Gold to rebuild the Trevose name. She lied. Voss lied. Now the house takes its own. Poirot stepped forward. You forged the skeleton, the chalice, the inscription. You strangled Hargrove, cut Tompkins's throat, passed the capsule to Evelyn. You planted the gelignite. But why? Elsie's laugh was Arabella's laugh. To bury them all. The gold is gone, melted, recast, shipped to Lisbon under my name. The estate will crumble. Jonathan will hang for the chapel explosion. Evidence planted. Clara will break. The curse wins. Jonathan raised the shotgun. Drop it! Elsie's eyes flicked to Clara. She's pregnant. Blackwood seed. Another generation to suffer. Clara's hand flew to her stomach. You lie. I don't, Elsie smiled. The locket, Reginald's gift. Inside, a fertility charm. He wanted an heir. You gave him one. Poirot's voice cut the tension. Enough. The revolver, Voss's, fingerprints, the gelignite, stolen from the quarry, your uncle's, the gold, tracked by serial numbers. You are clever, mademoiselle, but Hercule Poirot is cleverer. He produced the microfilm canister. This holds the real Trevose will. Arabella's dowry, never claimed. The land was hers by right. Jonathan will restore it. The curse ends with mercy. Elsie wavered. The revolver dipped. Clara stepped forward. My child will know both names, Trevose and Blackwood. No more blood. The gun clattered to the floor. Elsie sank to her knees, sobbing. Japp cuffed her. Elsie Trevose, alias Elsie Brown. You are charged with murder, conspiracy, theft. As they led her away, Poirot knelt by the chalice. The silver was warm still. He pried it free. Inside, a tiny compartment, a locket, Clara's returned, and a note in Reginald's hand. If you find this, the circle is closed. Forgive, rebuild, love. R.B. Jonathan read it aloud, voice breaking. He knew! All of it. Outside, the moon rose full. The rooks were silent. Dark House stood open to the night, its shadows finally at rest. Poirot boarded the train at dawn. The newspaper now read, Dark House curse lifted, heir to restore Trevose lands. He smiled, folded it, and ordered a tisane. The little grey cells were content.